You've got 20 years of expertise, a client list that mostly came from referrals, and somebody has told you that writing a book would help. And you're not sure whether that's true or whether it's just a thing people say. My name is Jacob Ratliff. I'm a professional book coach, and I've helped dozens of coaches, experts, and founders write books that build their credibility and help them attract new clients. So I'm going to make the case that it does work and be specific about the mechanism. Then I'll give you the 10 decisions that determine whether yours does. All 10 happen before you write chapter 1, and not one of them is about writing well. A book is the only thing you will ever make where somebody gives you 4 uninterrupted hours of attention in an order you chose on an argument you chose, having decided to do it themselves. On a podcast, the host picks the questions. On a call, you're reacting to whatever the person in front of you happens to ask. On social, the algorithm picks who sees it, and the format cuts you off right before the interesting part. A book has none of that. Nobody interrupts. Nothing gets trimmed for time. You establish the problem before you offer the solution, which is the one sequence that actually persuades anybody, and you get to do it in full. That's the mechanism. Not authority in some vague sense. Uninterrupted, in order, self-selected attention. And I'll give you numbers, because almost nobody in this space does. After my book Client Attractor came out, I signed 4 new clients in the first month. I've had at least 10 speaking invitations off the back of it, and my sales calls went from about 50 minutes to 20, because the part where I explained myself had already happened. But the one I'd actually point at isn't mine. A client of mine named Mark spent years getting work almost entirely through referrals. Now people reach out to him and tell him they found his book online. That's a different business, and it's worth being precise about why. A referral is a network with an edge to it. It travels about as far as one person can carry your name, and it stops. Mark's book reaches people nobody introduced him to. Here's the part that separates a book that produces clients from a book that just produces readers. What somebody wants when they finish depends entirely on what kind of book it was. A how-to attracts people who now intend to go and do it themselves. A book that changed how somebody thinks attracts people who want the person who changed it. Same subject, same author, completely different person on the other end. And that was a decision somebody made before chapter 1. Which is why most advice on this is aimed at the wrong month. Launch sequences, advanced readers, Amazon categories, all real and all downstream. By the time you're doing any of that, the book either converts or it doesn't. So, 10 decisions. Number 1, the reader you want to be hired by, not the reader you most want to help. Start here, because every other decision inherits from this one. Those are usually 2 different people, and almost nobody says that out loud. The reader you most want to help is often early, struggling, and short of money. The reader who hires you is further along, already spending, and has a narrower problem. Your book will have to choose between them constantly. Every example, every assumed level of knowledge, every price you mention casually. If you haven't decided, it chooses at random, and random averages out to nobody. The blueprint calls this the reader snapshot. You've made the decision when you can say the reader in one sentence and somebody who fits it would feel slightly exposed hearing it. None of this means people outside that group can't read it. They will, and they'll benefit. It means when the book has to pick, it picks toward the person who can hire you. Decide it badly and you get the worst possible outcome, which is a full inbox. People who love the book tell you so and could never have afforded you. Number 2, the moment they're in when they pick it up. This is the detail that turns a reader into an inquiry. Not who they are. What's happening to them that week? A consultant whose biggest client just gave notice. A coach who's fully booked and has realized that means she's capped. A founder who got asked to speak, heard his own answer and didn't like it. That moment is your first chapter, and it's your description, and it's the reason somebody messages you 6 months later. It's the half of the reader question people skip. You won't get it perfect on the first pass. It usually sharpens after a few chapters. Decide the version you have now anyway. Miss it, and nobody ever forwards the book to the person who actually needed it, because nothing in it names a moment they recognize. Number 3, the problem named at the root rather than the surface. Here's where your expertise becomes visible, and it's the fastest proof you've done this before. Your reader can name the surface problem on their own, not enough leads. You knowing the root problem is the entire reason they need you, that they've never articulated what makes them different. So every conversation starts from zero. The distance between those two is where somebody decides you know something they don't. Not every book needs that dwelt on. And with some audiences, a lighter touch works better. It does have to be in there. Name it the way the reader already names it, and you've confirmed what they thought and taught them nothing. They close the book agreeing with you and never once conclude they need you. Number 4, a promise with a mechanism in it. This is the difference between a promise and a wish. Most books promise an outcome. Grow your business. Become the go-to expert in your field. Readers stopped believing those a long time ago. A promise that works has the how it happens inside it, in a handful of words. Not, this book will help you raise your rates. Instead, this book shows a fully booked coach how to raise her rates without losing the clients she already has, using a positioning audit she can run over a weekend. Same claim. One of them sounds like a method, and one sounds like a hope. In the blueprint, this is the promise statement. Your subtitle comes out of it, your description comes out of it, and every time you're deciding whether a chapter belongs, you're checking against it. The time frame attached to it doesn't need to be aggressive. Slower and believed beats fast and doubted. Without it, the person who'd have hired you never picks the book up in the first place because nothing on the cover told them it was for them. Number 5, the gap your book fills that the good books in your space don't. Most people skip this one entirely, and it decides whether your book competes with anything. There are already 3 good books on your subject, and your reader can find all of them in one search. So the question yours has to answer before you write it is what those books don't do for this specific person. That's the gap question, and until you can answer it, you don't know whether your book has a reason to exist next to theirs. There's a test attached that I'd want you to actually run. Read your own differentiation and ask whether a competitor could copy that paragraph word for word and say it truthfully about their book. If they could, it isn't differentiation. It's a description. You don't need to have read all of those books. You do need to know honestly what they're for. Skip it and your reader buys the better-known book instead, reads it, and hires the person who wrote that one. Number 6, the thing your field won't say out loud. This is the whole reason somebody hires you rather than reading a more famous book on the same topic. Most people answer the authority question with credentials. Years in business, certifications, where they trained, that's permission seeking, and readers skim it. The real credential is what you know that most people in your field won't say out loud. Something you learned by doing the work, that you'd hesitate to put in writing, that a reader would recognize as true the moment they saw it. Mine is that people don't fail to finish books because of discipline. They fail because they never decided what the book was, and they've been calling that a writing problem for 2 years. Saying that plainly costs me the clients who want a productivity fix. It gets me the ones I can actually help. That's earned authority, not what qualifies you, what you've noticed. This isn't about being provocative. If the thing you'd hesitate to say is just unkind, that isn't the thing. Leave it out, and you're one of several credible people who could have written that book. That's a bad category to be in at the moment somebody is choosing. Number 7, a premise somebody could reasonably disagree with. People find this one genuinely uncomfortable, and it shortens sales calls more than anything else on the list. Your topic is not your book. Leadership is a topic. Your job as a leader isn't to produce good work. It's to build the conditions where other people can, is a book. One of those you can argue with, and that's the one that's a book. We call that the through line. One claim running the length of the manuscript that every chapter either supports or gets cut for failing to support. The commercial connection is direct rather than decorative. A book everyone nods along to changes nobody's mind. Somebody finishes it, agrees with you, and has no particular reason to pick up the phone. Somebody who finishes a book that changed their mind arrives already sold, and the call is about logistics. I'm not asking you to pick a fight for attention. That reads thin, and it brings the wrong people. Play it safe, and you get the outcome nobody warns you about. Good reviews, no calls, number 8. Whether your reader should do, think, or feel differently. This is the shortest decision on the list, and it changes everything downstream. Do something differently, and it's a how-to. Think about something differently, and it's thought leadership. Be moved as much as informed, and it's story-driven. Chapter length follows from that, and so does the order. Plenty of good books blend too. Pick the one that's driving, because they will conflict eventually, and you need to know which one wins. And remember what I said at the start. Get this one wrong, and you'll write a how-to for people you wanted as clients. And they'll thank you and go do it themselves. Number 9, what each chapter's job is and what order the jobs go in. This is where the writing finally starts. And it's still a decision rather than a draft. Every chapter has a job. Not a topic, a job. Understand the importance of positioning is a topic. Nothing happens to anybody. The reader can say in one sentence what makes them different from everyone else in their category. That's a job. Somebody can do something on Tuesday they couldn't do on Monday. Then the order, which people treat as an afterthought. The order of your chapters is an argument. Chapter 3 is making a claim that Chapter 4 builds on. If you could shuffle them and lose nothing, you don't have an argument, you have a collection. And collections don't change anybody's mind. That's the chapter map. Some chapters exist to give the reader a rest. That's fine, as long as you put them there on purpose. Get it wrong, and readers stop somewhere in the middle, and the ones who stop never get to whatever you put at the end. A book nobody finishes has never produced a phone call. Number 10, what you want the reader to do when they finish. Almost nobody decides this on purpose, and it's the one that most directly produces clients. Most business books just stop. The author has said everything, the reader closes it, and there's no obvious next move. That reader liked your book and will never contact you. So decide it in advance because it changes what goes in. The book has to leave one thing genuinely unresolved, not withheld, which readers can smell. Unresolved because it honestly requires a person. Mine is this. I can tell you exactly why a chapter isn't working, and I can't tell you what your book's argument should be, because that's in you, and it takes a conversation to get out. Everything I know about the first part is public. The second part is the work. Yours will be different, and finding it is a decision about scope, which is a writing decision. This doesn't make the book an advertisement. Everything you promised still gets delivered in full. You're being honest about where the page stops being enough. Leave it undecided, and you'll have the strangest experience in this business. People telling you for years how much your book helped them, and not one of them ever becoming a client. So that's the 10. The reader who hires you, the moment they're in, the problem at the root, a promise with a mechanism, the gap, the thing your field won't say, a premise somebody could disagree with. Do, think, or feel chapter jobs in an order that argues, and what you want them to do at the end. Not one of those is about writing well, and every one of them is the difference between a book people compliment and a book people call you about. Making those 10 decisions is what the 1-hour book blueprint is for. The reader, the promise, the premise, the chapter map. It's built to be finished in an afternoon, and it's the link below. Just $27.